It's funny. You only started calling me family once my bank account hit 8 figures. Instead of lemons, life gave me a plot of dirt and a family that mocked me. Instead of lemonade, I made millions. The principle still applies, right? Modern Queen Tales presents My Empire of Dirt. Ahem. Mr. Birkin cleared his throat. The sound echoed sharply against the heavy silence of his mahogany-panelled office. The air smelled of lemon furniture polish and the stale remnants of expensive cigars. I sat in a high-backed leather chair at the far end of the conference table. Directly across from me sat my stepbrother, Aaron, and my stepsister, Savannah. Aaron wore a bespoke navy suit and tapped a gold pen against his knee. Savannah filed her nails with a crystal emery board, her gaze fixed entirely on the flawless gloss of her manicure. My stepfather, Isaac Powell, died 3 weeks ago. He left behind a sprawling real estate empire, a fleet of vintage cars, and a family that tolerated me exclusively when legally required to do so. We come now to the final dispensations, Mr. Birkin said. He adjusted his silver-rimmed reading glasses and looked down at the thick parchment document on his desk. To my stepdaughter, Claire Kerrigan, I leave the entirety of Tract 42 in Oakhaven County. Aaron stopped tapping his pen. He let out a sharp, barking laugh. Savannah paused her filing. She looked up, her lips curling into a bright, vicious smile. Tract 42, the Dust Bowl. Oh, Claire. He really did remember you. Quiet, Savannah, Aaron said, though his own grin mirrored hers. Claire is a landowner now. We must show respect. She owns exactly 50 acres of dead scrub brush and fractured shale. I believe the local coyote population uses it as a latrine. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I looked directly at Mr. Birkin. Is there a deed, Mr. Birkin? Yes, Miss Kerrigan. The lawyer slid a manila folder across the polished expanse of the table. The taxes are paid through the end of the year. The title is clear and entirely in your name. I picked up the folder. The paper felt heavy and crisp. Enjoy your dirt, Claire, Aaron said. He leaned back and crossed his legs. Isaac always knew exactly what people were worth. I get the downtown commercial high-rises. Savannah gets the residential portfolio. You get a barren hole in the ground 3 hours outside the city limits. It perfectly reflects your contributions to this family. I stood up. I tucked the folder under my arm. I did not look at Aaron. I did not look at Savannah. Thank you for your time, Mr. Birkin, I said. I walked out of the office. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, sealing in the sound of their renewed laughter. I drove my 10-year-old sedan out of the city. The concrete skyline faded into suburban sprawl, which quickly gave way to endless, flat agricultural fields. By the 3rd hour, the paved highway turned into a pitted, gravel county road. The GPS on my phone lost its signal entirely. I navigated by the faded paper map the county clerk had mailed me. The air outside the car grew thick and dry. Dust coated my windshield in a fine, powdery layer. I took a sharp left at a rusted mailbox and drove down a deeply rutted dirt path. The car bounced violently over a series of dry washouts. I parked at the edge of Tract 42. I stepped out of the car. The heat hit me instantly. The sun beat down on a sprawling expanse of cracked, pale red earth. A few twisted, grey bushes clung to life near a pile of jagged rocks. The land stretched out flat and lifeless to the horizon. The ground itself looked deeply strange. I walked onto the property. My boots crunched over the surface. The earth here felt different from the loose, sandy dirt of the surrounding fields. I knelt down. I dug my fingers into the top layer. The soil felt dense, heavy. I scooped up a handful. The color caught my eye immediately. It possessed a rich, uniform, rust-red hue, shot through with microscopic, glittering flecks of silver. I squeezed the handful of dirt. It compacted instantly. I opened my hand. The dirt retained the exact shape of my grip. It formed a solid, unyielding clump. I stood up and dropped the clump onto a flat rock. Instead of shattering into dust, the clump hit the rock with a dull thud and rolled onto the ground, entirely intact. I crouched back down, I pulled a small trowel from the trunk of my car and dug a hole a foot deep. The soil composition remained perfectly consistent. Dense, heavy, cohesive, and practically vibrating with mineral density. I filled 3 heavy-duty plastic bags with the red dirt. I sealed them, loaded them into my trunk, and drove straight back to the city. The fluorescent lights of the University Materials Testing Lab buzzed overhead. Dr. Luke Holtz, the head of the geology department and an old friend from my undergraduate days, poured the contents of my 3rd plastic bag into a stainless steel testing tray. Luke adjusted his safety goggles and leaned over the tray. He rubbed the soil between his gloved thumb and forefinger. He placed a small sample under a high-powered electron microscope. He ran a second sample through a mass spectrometer. I stood by the metal counter, watching the readouts on his computer monitor spike and settle into steep graphs. Luke turned around. He pulled off his goggles and stared at me. "Where did you find this, Claire?" he asked. "Tract 42, Oakhaven County, 50 acres of it." Luke pointed to the computer screen. "This is a naturally occurring aluminosilicate deposit. The concentration of iron oxide gives it that red color. The silver flecks are a unique form of raw crystalline silica. Furthermore, the natural moisture content and the specific pH balance create a spontaneous binding effect." I stepped closer to the screen. I read the chemical breakdowns. "What does that mean in practical terms, Luke?" "It means you have 50 acres of pure, raw, ready-to-press geopolymer," Luke said. His voice carried a sharp edge of pure excitement. "Claire, standard construction bricks require clay. You have to mine the clay, transport it, mix it with water and shale, extrude it, and fire it in a kiln at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It takes massive amounts of energy. It produces tons of carbon emissions. The traditional brick industry is expensive and slow." He picked up a handful of the red dirt from the tray. He squeezed it into a solid ball and held it up. "This material requires 0 firing," Luke said. "You add a fractional percentage of an alkaline activator, basically liquid lye, and you apply mechanical pressure. That is the entire process. The silica and the aluminosilicates bond instantly at room temperature. They form a crystalline lattice structure. The resulting block cures in the sun in 24 hours. I looked at the ball of dirt in his hand. "How strong is it?" Luke walked over to a hydraulic testing press in the corner of the lab. He took the clump of dirt he had just squeezed, placed it in a small steel mold, added a single drop of a clear chemical solution from a dropper bottle, and pulled the lever on the press. The machine whined, applying 10,000 pounds of pressure. Luke released the press. He pulled out a perfect, smooth, rust-red cylinder. He set it on the table. He picked up a standard steel claw hammer. He swung the hammer down with all his strength directly onto the red cylinder. The hammer struck the cylinder with a deafening crack. The hammer bounced off. The cylinder sat on the table. A tiny, imperceptible scratch marked the impact point. The rest of the structure remained absolutely flawless. A standard fired clay brick has a compressive strength of roughly 3,000 pounds per square inch, Luke said. He picked up the cylinder and handed it to me. It felt heavy, cold, and solid as cast iron. "This material, pressed and cured, will hit 10,000 psi. It is fireproof, waterproof, and completely resistant to seismic fracturing. You own 50 acres of the most advanced building material on the planet, waiting to be scooped up and pressed." I looked down at the smooth red stone in my hand. I felt the weight of it. I saw the immediate future, unspooling clearly in front of my eyes. "I need an industrial mold, a mechanical press, and 50 gallons of alkaline activator," I said. "I start manufacturing tomorrow." I drained my personal savings account. The total came to exactly $22,000. I spent $8,000 renting a heavy-duty, diesel-powered, hydraulic block press. I spent $4,000 on a flatbed delivery truck. I spent $3,000 on raw industrial lye and mixing vats. I spent the rest on a used backhoe. I drove the convoy of machinery out to Oakhaven County on a Tuesday morning. I hired 3 local farmhands from the neighboring town. Their names were Kevin, Jason, and Conrad. I paid them double the local hourly rate, in cash. We set up the operation in the center of the 50-acre tract. The process functioned with brutal, beautiful simplicity. I drove the backhoe. I scooped the raw red earth directly from the ground and dumped it into a massive steel hopper. Kevin managed the hopper, feeding the dirt onto a conveyor belt. The belt carried the dirt into the mixing vat. Jason monitored the vat, adding the precise ratio of alkaline activator solution. The moistened, activated earth fed directly into the hydraulic press. Conrad operated the press. The press slammed down with a mechanical rhythm. Ka-chunk. Hiss. Ka-chunk. Hiss. Every 10 seconds, the machine ejected 4 perfect, interlocking, rust-red bricks. We stacked them on wooden pallets under the blazing sun. The chemical reaction generated heat. I could feel the warmth radiating off the pallets as I walked past them. By Wednesday evening, the first batch of 1,000 bricks had fully cured. I picked one up from the top of the stack. The edges felt razor-sharp. The surface felt smooth and dense. The brick weighed exactly 8 pounds. It possessed a locking lip on the bottom and a receiving groove on the top. I stacked 5 bricks together. They locked into place with a satisfying, precise click. The wall segment stood perfectly rigid. It required no mortar. The natural polymer bonds and the interlocking design held the structure with absolute structural integrity. By Friday afternoon, we had manufactured 10,000 bricks. The pallets covered a 1/4 acre of the property. The raw materials cost me virtually nothing. The machinery rental and labor cost me a few $1,000s. The inventory sitting on my land represented pure, untapped profit. I loaded a single pallet of 500 bricks onto the flatbed truck. I wrapped them tightly in industrial plastic wrap. I strapped them down. I drove the truck back to the city. I drove directly to the corporate headquarters of Zenith Development. Zenith Development handled the largest municipal construction contracts in the state. They built schools, hospitals, and high-density residential complexes. The CEO, a man named Thomas Baxter, was known for his aggressive cost-cutting measures and his utter lack of patience. I parked the flatbed truck in the loading zone, directly in front of the glass-fronted Zenith Tower. I walked into the lobby. I carried a single red brick in my right hand. I walked past the receptionist. I ignored the security guard calling after me. I stepped into the executive elevator and hit the button for the top floor. I walked out of the elevator and straight into Thomas Baxter's corner office. Powell sat behind a massive glass desk, examining a set of blueprints. He looked up, his brow furrowing in instant anger. "Who are you? How did you get up here?" Powell demanded. He reached for his phone. I walked up to his glass desk. I placed the red brick directly on top of the blueprints. "My name is Claire Kerrigan. I own Kerrigan Materials. I manufacture the most advanced, cost-effective, structural brick in the world, and I can supply your next 10 projects at 40% below your current materials cost." Powell stopped reaching for the phone. He looked at the brick. He looked at me. He let out a harsh breath. "I buy my masonry from National Clay. I have a locked-in supply chain. I don't buy novelty rocks from people who break into my office. National Clay charges you $1.20 per standard fired brick," I said, reciting the figures I had memorized on the drive. "Their bricks require mortar. They require specialized masons to lay. They chip in transit. They have a failure rate of 4% under standard load-bearing tests." I picked up the red brick. I handed it to him. Powell took it. His arm dipped slightly under the unexpected weight. He ran his fingers over the smooth surface and the interlocking grooves. "I sell these for 60 cents a unit," I said. "They require 0 mortar. They interlock. A general laborer can stack them 3 times faster than a master mason can lay standard brick. They have a compressive strength of 10,000 psi. They are fireproof to 3,000 degrees. Powell set the brick down on his desk. He leaned back in his chair. The anger vanished from his face. replaced by a sharp, calculating focus. "Those are impossible numbers," Powell said. "Nothing comes out of a mold with 10,000 psi without kiln firing. The energy costs alone make 60 cents a unit a fantasy. I don't fire them, I press them cold," I said. "The material is a naturally occurring geopolymer. The chemical reaction creates the strength. The curing happens at room temperature. I have 50 acres of the raw material. I can press 1,000,000 bricks a month starting right now. I have 500 of them sitting on a flatbed truck out front." Powell stood up. He walked over to the brick. He picked up a heavy brass paperweight from his desk. He slammed the paperweight down on the corner of the brick. The brass paperweight dented. The red brick remained flawless. Powell stared at the dented brass in his hand. He looked down at the brick. He looked at me. "Bring the truck around to the testing yard," Powell said. "If my engineers verify your load-bearing claims, and if these things actually lock together without mortar, I will write you a check today for an initial order of 500,000 units." I nodded. "I will meet you in the yard." The testing yard sat behind the Zenith headquarters. A team of 3 structural engineers in hard hats circled the pallet of my red bricks. They unloaded 50 units. They stacked them into a 6-foot wall segment in less than 3 minutes. The interlocking grooves slid together with perfect precision. The lead engineer backed a forklift up to the freestanding wall. He accelerated and rammed the steel forks directly into the center of the structure. A standard mortar wall would have collapsed instantly. The red wall shuddered. The interlocking joints absorbed the kinetic energy. The forklift bounced back. The wall remained standing, entirely structurally sound. The engineer climbed down from the forklift. He walked up to the wall, placed a specialized sonic density meter against the surface, and read the output. He turned to Thomas Baxter, who stood next to me. "Density is uniform," the engineer said. "No internal fracturing. The shear strength is off the charts. Mr. Powell, this material outperforms high-grade poured concrete." Powell pulled a checkbook from his breast pocket. He rested it on the hood of my flatbed truck. He pulled out a pen. 500,000 units, Powell said. "Delivered to the Riverfront Residential Project site by the end of the month. At 60 cents a unit," I said. $300,000. I require a 50% deposit up front to scale my manufacturing equipment. Powell wrote the check. He tore it out of the book and handed it to me. $150,000, Powell said. "Get me my bricks, Kerrigan." I looked at the check. The ink shone wet and black in the afternoon sun. I folded the check and put it in my pocket. "You will have them in 2 weeks, I said. I returned to Tract 42 the next morning. I drove a brand new, heavy-duty pickup truck. I brought a cashier's check for $100,000 to the local heavy machinery dealer. I purchased 3 industrial-grade, fully automated hydraulic presses. I bought 2 massive front-end loaders. I hired a crew of 30 men. The barren expanse of Tract 42 transformed immediately into a massive industrial foundry. We operated 24 hours a day. The floodlights illuminated the red dust night and day. The front-end loaders tore into the earth, feeding a continuous stream of raw geopolymer into the hoppers. The 3 automated presses slammed down with rhythmic, earth-shaking force. The pallets of red bricks multiplied across the landscape, forming vast, geometric canyons of curing stone. The logistics flowed perfectly. Zenith Development sent a fleet of transport trucks every morning. They loaded the cured pallets, drove them to the Riverfront project, and returned empty the next day. The money poured into my newly established corporate accounts. Within the first month, the Riverfront project went up in record time. The interlocking bricks eliminated the need for specialized masons, cutting labor costs by 60%. The structural integrity of the buildings exceeded municipal safety codes by a massive margin. Word spread through the commercial development sector instantly. The math stood undeniable. My material was stronger, faster to build with, and drastically cheaper than anything else on the market. By the end of the second month, my phone rang constantly. Major developers from across the state demanded supply contracts. I signed a $2 million deal with Stratton Construction for a hospital wing. I signed a $4 million contract with Stratton Builders for a sprawling suburban housing development. I purchased the adjacent 200 acres of land. I tested the soil. The geopolymer deposit extended deep beneath the neighboring properties. I bought the land for pennies. I expanded the foundry. I brought in 10 more automated presses. I hired 100 more workers. I paved the dirt road leading to the site. I built a sleek, steel and glass administrative office overlooking the massive quarry. I sat at my desk on a Friday afternoon, exactly 3 months after the will reading. I pulled up my financial dashboard. On my monitor, the Kerrigan Materials operating account held $8.5 million in liquid capital. We held $20 million in backlogged, signed contracts. The operation generated pure, continuous profit. My assistant, a highly efficient woman named Sarah, knocked on the open door of my office. "Miss Kerrigan," Sarah said, "you have visitors at the front gate. They are demanding entry. They claim to be your family." I looked up from the monitor. "Let them in, Sarah. Have security escort them directly to my office." Aaron and Savannah walked into my office. Security guards flanked them. Aaron wore the same bespoke navy suit, but his face looked pale and tight. Savannah clutched a designer handbag tightly against her chest. Her eyes darted around the sleek office, taking in the expensive furniture, the massive windows overlooking the sprawling, hyperactive manufacturing facility, and the endless fleets of trucks loading pallets of red bricks. Aaron stopped in front of my desk. He placed both hands on the polished wood surface. "We need to talk, Claire," Aaron said. His voice lacked its usual arrogant drawl. It sounded strained. "Finn, speak," I said. I leaned back in my chair. "The commercial high-rises Isaac left me," Aaron began, swallowing hard. "The structural foundations are failing. The municipal inspectors found severe concrete degradation. The repair costs are catastrophic. The banks are threatening to call in the loans." Savannah stepped forward. "And the residential properties. The property taxes skyrocketed, and the maintenance costs have drained the operating accounts. We are facing insolvency." I looked at them. I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no residual anger. Just a cold, clear sense of finality. "We saw the news in the financial journals," Aaron said. He gestured toward the window. "This operation, the Kerrigan brick. You revolutionized the market. You are sitting on tens of millions of dollars." "I am sitting on Tract 42, I said. "The Dust Bowl, the Coyote latrine." Aaron flinched. Savannah opened her mouth, closed it, and looked down at her shoes. "Claire, we are family," Aaron said. He forced a smile. It looked completely broken. "Isaac left this land to you as part of the family estate. Legally, the mineral rights could be construed as shared assets. We are prepared to offer you a partnership. We consolidate the real estate portfolio with your manufacturing firm. We form a conglomerate. We share the profits." I opened the top drawer of my desk. I pulled out the original manila folder Mr. Birkin had handed me 3 months ago. I opened it. I slid the deed across the desk. Aaron looked at the paper. "Read the title," I said. Aaron read it. "Claire Kerrigan. Sole ownership. There are no shared assets. There is no conglomerate," I said. I picked the deed back up and returned it to the drawer. I shut the drawer with a sharp, echoing snap. "You received the empire you believed you deserved. You mismanaged it into ruin in 90 days. I received 50 acres of dirt. I built a multi-million-dollar corporation with my own hands. You possess nothing I need. You possess nothing I want." "Claire, please," Savannah said, her voice cracking. "We will lose everything." "You already lost it," I said. I looked at the security guards. "Escort them off my property. If they return, have them arrested for trespassing." The guards stepped forward. They grasped Aaron and Savannah by the arms. Aaron opened his mouth to shout, but the guard pulled him firmly toward the door. Savannah stumbled backward, her face white with shock. They dragged them out of the office. The heavy glass door swung shut behind them. I stood up from my desk. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. The sun set over the Oakhaven horizon, casting a brilliant orange glow over the landscape. Below me, the massive mechanical presses slammed down into the red earth. The sound reverberated through the glass, a steady, powerful rhythm. Ka-chunk, hiss. Trucks lined up for miles, waiting to carry my product across the state. The ground itself yielded a fortune with every passing second. I looked out over the empire I built from the dirt beneath my feet. I watched the machines carve away the earth, pressing it into perfect, unyielding form. The process ran flawlessly. The rewards multiplied endlessly. I owned the land. I owned the process. I owned the future. The end. If you enjoyed this quick escape, hit the subscribe button for new stories twice a week. Until then, I'll see you at the next flip of the pages.